Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we are going to do an end of year wrap up. Guys, top three movies of 2024.
So at my number three, I've got season one of Shogun, which I enjoyed a lot. And I put it there because throughout the year, we've kind of been complaining about things like historical accuracy and stuff like that. And this show just kind of showed that if you take into account time and place and have that inform your characters and your plot, what do you know? It actually leads to a good story. And as a result, Shogun was this really gripping political drama where the time and place and who the characters were really informed that. And that made it a better story and made it more enjoyable. And so for that reason, that's my number three.
I actually didn't know we were doing TV shows as well in this. Otherwise, some things may have been rearranged in this, but I kept it strictly movies.
I just figured anything we talked about this year was fair game.
Fair. And actually, if I knew that, then I probably would have gone with TV shows because I actually really struggled with the top three movies this year. Because
you want to redo your list?
No. We're okay. I'm kind of happy with mine anyways. So at my number three, I have Smile 2. And I was going off of kind of...
Smile 2?
Smile 2. So I was going off of experience in the cinema. And this one kept me on the edge of my seat throughout the entire movie. It ticked all the right boxes for me. It was psychological horror, really tortured the main character, and I kind of like was on this emotional ride with the character throughout the movie. It just had like a crazy fun ride, and it had, I'd say, a very satisfying ending as well for me in terms of sort of like where the story was going, how it opened it up to sort of kind of like, crazy possibilities as well in future. And yeah, it had like really strong characters, really cool story, really cool concepts, touched on some like really interesting themes and stuff like that. So Smile 2 is my number three.
Wow, looks like you might be converted to the dark side, the horror side.
Yeah.
That was actually a good shout. I was actually battling with Smile 2 as well on my list. Unfortunately, it doesn't feature on my list while I was battling. And I didn't know as well, Daniel, that we'll do a series as well. Because if I knew that we'll do a series, actually, my list probably wouldn't have changed. Actually, it might have. Maybe there would have been a series instead of my number three, actually. It would have been between, you know what? It might have been Penguin would have been my number three. However, I'm still happy. Nah, I'm going to leave Penguin out. Penguin will get number 4, but so my number 3 will be Gladiator 2. Look, man, I know what you guys are thinking. For you, it wasn't that great. Well, for me, bro, Gladiator just brought back that blockbuster feel. I think it wasn't, I do agree, the story, yeah, cool, it had plot holes, but just like overall, my experience and the feeling that I had with this movie, and feeling for me is very important when it comes to watching a movie. You know what I'm saying? I'll remember that feeling. Not for a long time, but I'll remember that feeling for this year. Like, I haven't felt that blockbuster feeling where I feel like people are excited to go to the cinema in a long time. I told you, when I went to Odeon, there was a line coming outside. I haven't seen a line for a movie in a very long time. I don't remember if you guys remember where there was a line like coming from outside the cinema. I don't know. Was that what was the last movie? I don't think that even happened for Dune 2. Maybe the last one was Avengers. I could be wrong, but yeah. So like this, like just the feeling, just like everyone, just like it just felt like a whole cinema community again. There's people loved going to the cinema again, watching Gladiator. The action for me was amazing. Yes, I said there were plot holes in the story, but still, it just brought back that cinema feel. So yeah, for me, number 3's got Gladiator 2.
So that whole cinematic experience thing where people actually show up to a movie and are excited about it. Now, of that, I had that with my number 1 and 2 picks, and that's a factor as well.
But this year?
So the movies I have at number 1 and 2, for those, I had that experience where people showed up in large numbers and were really excited to be at the movies and stuff like that. I didn't have that with Gladiator. But yeah, that's absolutely something that really enhances a movie when that comes together.
All right, cool. Who wants to go next? Number 2.
All right. On my number 2, I've got Dune 2, which I think is a wonderful movie. It's a really good take on the original story. It's a well-crafted movie. It looks gorgeous. It's well acted. The effects are among the best I've seen. It doesn't make number 1 because I have huge issues with the ending, where in order to fix one story problem, Villeneuve kind of created another, which was that the whole blackmailing the Galaxy Gambit didn't pay off, which like it just doesn't work in the movie version. And that kind of breaks what the story is about. That's not just a small detail. That's not just something to get upset about if you're a book purist. This is something that actually undermines the point of the story. And for that reason, I can't put it at number 1. But everything else about that movie is wonderful. And I'm kind of amazed that it happened in the first place. and that everything just came together for that movie to actually turn out the way it did. And for that reason, it's my number 2.
In terms of the ending, are you referring to that it wasn't a close, like it wasn't like a faithful adaptation to the actual?
No. If you go back to our review at the time, we spent like 15 minutes on this. But the basic thing is that Paul wins by realizing that he controls the spice, and therefore he can destroy the spice, and therefore he can control the galaxy. And everybody else has no choice but submit to him as emperor, because he is in that position. And he does that in the movie, but it doesn't work because most of the great houses don't surrender. Instead, they just get conquered by the Fremen. And that was done to fix a problem where kind of the holy war that the Fremen go on happens off screen in the books. And I think Villeneuve wanted to fix that. But in doing so, he changed how the gambit played out. And in doing so, he undermined the point of the story. That is just like, it doesn't ruin the movie, but it's like, it's a major problem. And I'm amazed that somebody who otherwise gets the story so well does not seem to have realized this. And that is a major flaw in the movie. But that's one flaw, like in an otherwise wonderful movie. And that just pulls it down from number 1 to number 2.
Cool. Daniel, I can't lie, your list is kind of not shocked.
I can't lie.
Yeah. I thought Dune was going to be number 1, so I have no idea. I'm just trying to think, what movie did you praise so well? It definitely can't be Joker 2, but imagine.
There were a bunch of movies I really liked this year, but we'll get to number 1 when we get to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now that I know we can include TV series. I've done a last minute reshuffle of what number 2 was. So originally it was going to be Speak No Evil, but I have now pivoted and I'm moving it to The Penguin. Reason being is this was a great sort of expansion of the Matt Reeves Batman universe that he's creating. He understands how to tell a story from a villain perspective without turning the villain into a hero and actually like making the villain a villain whilst also making them sort of kind of like sympathetic, and sort of half making you want to root for them, but half also, being horrified at the acts that they're that they're committing in this. And finishes it off by solidifying that the Penguin is in fact a true villain, and you shouldn't have been rooting for him from sort of the decisions that he makes. By even having a character that the audience really cared about. I mean, spoiler or not, you should have watched the Penguin, but having a character that the audience care about, sort of dying at the hands of the Penguin at the very sort of the last episode of this. Again, sort of amazing performances from Colin Farrell. He had a small role in the original Batman movie, but for him to be kind of like the main focus of this, he just completely like captivated every single scene that he was in. He just literally like had charisma oozing from the screen anytime he was doing anything at all in this, and he's flipping hilarious in it as well in his own way. So for that reason, the Penguin is my number 2.
I wonder how they're going to manage his character, because they were saying how he's going to be in the next 2 Batman movies, 2 or 3. And then also, I think he's going to get a season 2 for, like, in terms of his series. So I just hope it isn't a thing where, obviously, with his series, you will need to watch his series in order to understand what happens to, like, you will need to understand what happens in the Batman movies. I just hope they can kind of like separate the 2. Yeah, he's definitely a character which has definitely been like, he's loved in the whole DC universe. So I think that's another one that they should definitely bank all their money on. Like they did with Iron Man. Well, I wouldn't say totally kind of like rely on him in terms of kind of like to rejuvenate DC, but just he's definitely now one of the heads, one of the characters that they can kind of like rely on if they wanted to make a movie and guarantee success. Because I can say he's a loved character. So yeah, I'm not too angry with number 2. For me, number 2 was a sticky one. Okay, I'm just gonna say number 2 because I thought number 2 was gonna be my number 1, but I had to take everything into consideration. So for number 2, I'm going to say Alien Romulus. I don't care what anyone says. Alien Romulus for me is the best Alien movies in the franchise. I was arguing about this with myself, right? I said to myself, let me not say that, because I know how everyone regards Alien 2 as the best film of all time. I ain't gonna argue that. However, for me, Alien Romulus was just an all-rounder. He had everything that I wanted. If people know me, I've said this many times. My type of genre is like a group of people in a sticky situation trying to survive. It doesn't matter what the environment is. It could be in dystopia, post-apocalyptic, which is similar, thriller settings, drama setting, in a realistic setting. Like for me, like just a group of people in a situation where they're trying to survive. That is my type of movie. But yeah, this movie just had everything. Now, number 1 is definitely an all-rounder, but what separates number 1 from number 2 in terms of Alien Romulus. I can't remember what number 1 is. I think my number 1 had the like better storytelling than number 2. So yeah, I think Alien Romulus was still a good story for me, and it was definitely emotionally engaging, especially like the whole relationship dynamic between what's her name, the protagonist and her brother, well, the robot. Yeah, so in individual performances and the relationship dynamic, it definitely had everything that I wanted in terms of the action, the emotional engagement, the stakes were high, the freaking the customer designs, the unexpected wow factor, especially at the end. Like, it had everything, and I'm excited that they're gonna do a series. I think there's 2 series, two. I don't know if it's a series. I think one's a series, one's a movie. I'm not too sure, but I know there's 2 Alien Romulus movies or TV shows coming out in 2025, I believe. So I'm definitely excited about that. So yeah, that's my number 2.
I liked Alien Romulus a lot, but it's just too much of a mixed bag for me to put it at the very top of the scale. Like, the good parts are quite good, but there's just too much in there where I say, like, did you have to do this, or was this really the best choice? But yeah, it's definitely solid, and it's definitely probably one of the more creative movies. I thought, like, it's very referential to the older Alien stuff, but the way it uses those old pieces, it didn't happen very often this year, where I thought, well, somebody had some creativity or put some thought into this, especially when it's like a long-running franchise or something. And I think that's definitely something that speaks in favor of Romulus.
I forgot to mention, Alien Romulus is in my top 10 movies of all times. Surprisingly, a 2024 movie in my top 10 movies of all times. I was very surprised. I didn't think I was going to get that. But actually, I got two movies in my top 10s of all time. So yeah. But now the main event. Number 1.
So number 1 for me is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Whoa.
It's just and the reason it climbs to number 1 is that all parts are at least good, and the best parts of it are excellent. So it crafts this living world. It's part of a larger franchise that just for 4 movies in a row just does what it wants to do, and without any nonsense surrounding it. I thought the story was good, the world building is good, the scenery is great. It's just one of the few movies, along with Dune 2, that really kind of sold me on the here's this world to experience. Very few other movies came even close this year to actually doing that. And the thing that pushed Planet of the Apes to number 1 and Dune to number 2 is that Planet of the Apes doesn't have any big issue like Dune 2's ending, where I say, well, this kind of a fly in the soup, right? And this one is just at least good all the way through, with bits and pieces excellent. And for that reason, it's my number 1.
I'm shocked.
You know what? I was shocked at first as well, but I remember you were raving so much about this movie, even in general conversations that we had in the office, just anyway, you would talk about this film. So I'm like, but I just didn't know it had such an impact on you. Because it was a good movie, but number 1?
I actually missed that review as well. I think I was on like parent leave at the time, so I didn't actually catch the review for that one. But it definitely did a lot of things good for me, but I just could never jive with the protagonist. Was it Noah in the movie? I could never like really get behind his story in this, which didn't didn't allow me to have that emotional connection to the movie at all. So even when I was like thinking about this, it didn't even come into my consideration when I was kind of going through it as one of my favorites. But fair enough. Fair. That's interesting.
Yeah, and Noah is probably one of the weaker parts of the story, but that's still like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. That's the worst part. And when you can say that about a movie, then you've got something good on your hands.
Yeah.
I never really had an issue with Noah, because for me, like I said, they're building a new universe. So obviously with the character, he has to start from somewhere. So I was pretty interested to see what like his character arc, and of course there's gonna be development. So it's like, I didn't expect too much from him in terms of like him being macho, like the macho man already in number 1. So me personally, I didn't have an issue with his story.
It's the first chapter in his story. He's being compared to Caesar, who is one of the strongest fictional characters in a while. He's just a very by the numbers hero's journey kind of character. That is nothing to be excited about. And if he had to carry the movie, then he probably couldn't. But because he's in an otherwise so excellent movie, it's fine.
I think I need to rewatch the movie, because I don't know why I felt like, again, I love the Planet of the Apes franchise, but I don't know why I felt so disappointed watching it. Maybe I had sort of the high hopes, and maybe I had the expectations of the original trilogy in my mind when going into this, so that when it didn't hit that, I was like majorly disappointed. I didn't give it the proper sort of maybe respect that the movie deserved. So maybe I need to rewatch it and just see it with sort of kind of like fresh eyes, and actually see what you saw in the movie, basically.
a lot of this is taste too, right? And I'm just amazed that we had such a good year for science fiction. Between my picks and Alien, proper science fiction, I think, has been really in short supply for a few years now. And we got like 3 at least good ones in 1 year, which I was very happy about. And that just hits my tastes exactly. And for somebody with different tastes, I can totally see how this was would not quite reach to those lost levels. But here are just movies I did not think we would get, basically. And then we got them, and I was just happy. But sometimes that's enough.
For sure. So my number one, I mean, is there any surprise? It's Dune Part 2. For me, this was a complete masterpiece. Of course, Daniel kind of like touched on a lot of things in this, the cinematography, the acting, and this, that, and the other. But there was just like so much quotables that came out of this as well. So many kind of like different memes just from like the kind of like great moments that came from this. Of course, like the Lisan Al-Qaib just kind of went crazy on Twitter for whatever reason. But again, just the adrenaline rush that I felt when Paul Atreides drinks the potion of life, I believe it's called, and it just completely like flips and goes in a new directive, and his character becomes more kind of like forceful and powerful and more driven in what he's doing. And from that moment, I was just like a complete high with the movie, and I just didn't come back down until the movie ended. Like it was like a dopamine rush, and I had to like experience it 3 or 4 times this year. It was just like that amazing. And it being a 3-hour movie, it didn't feel like it. Like you just kind of like breeze through the movie, and it was, I don't know, it had so many highs. And for someone that didn't get Dune Part 1 initially and had to rewatch it just before rewatching Dune Part 2, I can't wait to see what they do with Dune Part 3. I know Daniel had the issues with the ending. I didn't quite have as many issues. Maybe I haven't read the books, so I haven't got that knowledge of it going into the movies. And for me, it was fine. I don't know. It was fine. I didn't have the same issues as Daniel had on that one.
It's not just about the books. They actually make that point in the movie multiple times. So it's clear they understand it, but then they throw it away in the last 5 minutes. And that's the part that, and I care a lot about endings. Like if like a good or bad ending can really swing the overall impression for a movie for me. And then for that to happen, then I'm gonna have a problem with that. But yeah, Dune is just wonderful. Like it's the only movie I've seen twice in cinemas since Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. And normally I don't do that. Normally I like to let it sit for a while and then some months later maybe revisit it on Blu-ray or something. And there, as soon as I walked out of the first showing, I booked the second one. And I've not done that in 20 years. So yeah, no arguments from me.
For me, Dune Part 2, number 1. That's my number 1. I don't really have much to add on to what Hervé said because he pretty much got it spot on. But yeah, man, okay, the only issue I had with Dune Part 2, let me just start off with the issue, was, what's his name? Fade Rafa. Yeah, his character. And that's my issue that I had with the movie, was I didn't think they built him up enough to be the antagonist threat that I wanted him to be, especially the way that he was conveyed, the way he was portrayed in the trailers. It seemed like, like I was waiting for the showdown between him and Paul, and then obviously just the way that his story kind of like transpired. It was like, there wasn't enough of it. There wasn't enough of him for when the showdown actually happened. It didn't really feel like much. It was like, okay, it's just another showdown. It could have been something monumental, but unfortunately, it didn't end up being that. But it's what it is. But overall, the movie, listen, this film for me, I think it had the greatest moments in cinema history for me. Dune Part 2 is definitely in my top 3. I don't know if it's number 1 or number 2. It might be number 2. I think Hunger Games is going to be number 1 because the Hunger Games just changed the way that I viewed cinema. I think Hunger Games was something where I was like, okay, that made me a cinema goer. So it's between Hunger Games and Dune Part 2. It might even be number 3. I'm not too sure. But still, yeah, Dune Part 2, I think it had like the greatest moments I've ever witnessed in cinema. So I say, for me, Alien Romulus is a great all-rounder in terms of that. He just had everything, like bits of everything. It wasn't great at everything, but it was good at everything, which gave me such an amazing experience. But Dune Part 2, I think it had individual moments where I was like, wow, like I've never had a feeling like that before. The first moment was Paul's entrance. You know the scene where after he drank the blue potion, whatever it is,
when he's addressing the feminine people.
Yeah, but that's moment number 2. So when that's Paul's speech is number 2, but number 1 is when he's doing the entrance. So when he's actually walking in between the Fremen in the you see where the above shot And then obviously you see his face, how it's changed, just walking in between. Those two moments there, for me, one of the greatest moments I've ever experienced when it comes to cinema. I'm just so pissed I didn't get to watch it in BFI. I watched it in IMAX, but I didn't get to watch it in BFI IMAX. So I'm going to definitely go watch it again. Even though I watched Alien Romulus 3 times and I watched Dune Part 2 once, I'm waiting to watch Dune Part 2 in BFI IMAX when it comes out. But yeah, I think for me, Dune Part 2, greatest individual moments in cinema history for me. That's why it has to go number one, and it's definitely top 3 films of all time for me. So before we get onto the worst movies of 2024, is there anything in our list where you guys disagree with, or you're okay to move on?
I think maybe like an honorable mention would be something like A Quiet Place Day One. And actually, when Daniel put Dune Part 2 as his number 2, I was half thinking that might make his number 1. But I didn't. Again, I missed out on the Planet of the Apes reaction, so didn't sort of anticipate he'd like that one as much as he did. But that's probably the only other one that I thought probably could have made it somewhere, but just didn't quite fit into my top 3.
Aye, well, top 3 worst movies of 2024. Oh, brother.
So my number 3 is Gladiator 2.
Oh, wow. No way.
The reason for it is that it's weak or an outright failure on every level: character, story, setting, everything, right? As a sequel, as a historical movie, as a hero's journey, like it's at best underwhelming on every front. And for me, at least, there was nothing that really was good enough to compensate for the weak parts, right? Like the first movie is also not terribly historically accurate, but it's a great hero's journey. And that makes the total package more enjoyable. And here it was just lacking on every front. Also, Ridley Scott, one of the most celebrated filmmakers ever, just turns in this mediocre movie and then goes around picking fights with people in interviews, calling historians stupid, and anybody who doesn't like his movie basically saying it's their fault. All of that just left a bad taste in my mouth and basically left me extremely unimpressed, more so than if it had been some beginner director hired for work, basically, right? I've been reading a little bit about that movie and about like the historical characters and everything, and every change they made to the historical basis just makes the movie worse. Like, I like historical accuracy in movies, but I recognize that sometimes you can change something to make a better story. But every change Ridley Scott made it worse on every front, just in terms of how Rome is portrayed, in terms of the characters, in terms of the stories that unfold. And that is just deeply unimpressive for somebody with decades of experience who is supposed to be one of the greatest. And so for that reason, I was just not impressed. And that's different, I think, from just like a factory assembled movie made for an IP or something. Like, you know, from the start, that one probably wasn't going to be great. So it's not objectively the worst movie, whatever that means. But just the fact that, like, the circumstances, who made it and how and why, each contribute to its awfulness. So that's why it made my bottom 3.
I think I'm like somewhere in between the two of you on Gladiator 2, because whilst I enjoyed it as a spectacle in the cinema, it was definitely one of those movies is that every time you thought about the movie, it got progressively worse in every possible way. And again, when we were having the discussion and you started mentioning about some of the characters, the twins and Denzel's character and stuff, everything sounded like they could have made a much better, more interesting movie than they did, than they sort of kind of delivered here. But yeah, I kind of understand it from both your points, because I know Jonathan cares a little bit more about like action, the spectacle, the entertainment value from the cinemas. And on those fronts, I think the movie does it quite well in that aspect. But again, like Daniel said, weak story, weak characters, not really much going on with the plot, and there's a lot of moments that didn't feel satisfying, or a lot of payoffs that didn't feel satisfying at all.
I will agree. Historical accuracy was off. Hero's journey was off. I agree. However, for me personally, the reason why I think I rate this film so highly is because the first movie wasn't a classic for me. It was a good movie. I watched it. It was a good movie. However, it wasn't something it was a movie which I didn't understand why it was like regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time. So that's why when going into Gladiator 2, I wasn't expecting much. So then when I got a friggin' spectacle, I was like, whoa, this was amazing. So I wasn't looking for the progression that people who already invested in in the Gladiator franchise were like looking for. So for me, I already had low expectations. And not only it went above my low expectations, it went reached high expectations. Like, it just provided the whole excitement and the thrill that I needed. So I wasn't really looking for progression when it comes to like the whole hero's journey. For me, what the highlights were individual performances and, like I said, the whole spectacle, the entertainment value to it. So that was great for me. So I understand. I'm not gonna argue with Daniel. I'm surprised it was number 3. I'm surprised it was like, you know, it was in your number 3 worst movie list of all time. However, I think because we were just looking for different things in the movie, and obviously we've already had like different views already on the franchise, so that's why you're more, I wouldn't say you're more invested in the film than me. I don't know. Wait, do you think Gladiator 1 is like one of the greatest movies of all time? Are you like one of those people?
I just think it's a really good one.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, so for me, like I said, I wasn't really invested in the whole franchise in the beginning. So when I got the movie, I was like, whoa, like this movie was like, number 2 was just amazing. It just had everything that I needed.
And sometimes the mood you're in when you watch a movie can really color how you perceive it and what sticks with you, right? And like sometimes a movie just hits you at exactly the right moment. So there's no right or wrong here, right? That's just our experiences. And for what it's worth, Gladiator 2 narrowly beat out Wicked for that spot. And that's all I want to say about that.
Wow, we actually had our lists are so opposing. It's crazy.
Do you know the gag would have been is if Daniel's worst movies list, or if like both are combined, would have been everything that you put as your top movies.
Okay.
My number 3, and this is one where I've got like an irrational hate for this movie for whatever reason, but it's The Beekeeper that we watched at the very top of the year. This movie, I actually went into this kind of hoping that I'd have a really good experience from this. And again, like I've enjoyed a lot of Jason Statham movies in the past, but this just did everything wrong for me. It had a really terrible protagonist in this who seemed to be sort of great at everything, no character flaws, nothing particularly interesting about them whatsoever. The story was pretty dumb for the most part, pretty stupid, and there was like massive like plot holes, like when the guy's coming after him and he kind of like, I can't remember it exactly, but he kind of like spares one of the guy's lives just to go back and kill him again. And it was like, I don't know why you made that decision. I can't remember the exacts in the movie, but there was like a really dumb decision in there, which sort of didn't need to be made. And the action didn't sort of compensate for all the poor things in the movie. And then I was just kind of like rolling my eyes through large parts of it, especially the whole infiltrating the White House. I think it was the White House, infiltrating where the president was. I was just like, this is extremely dumb. Like, what's going on here? And I was like progressively getting annoyed whilst like just like sat there having to watch this movie. And if not for us doing this recording, I probably would have walked out of the cinema essentially. So for that reason, I know people loved it. I know it's got a really positive sort of Rotten Tomato scores or whatever, but for me, terrible movie. And it probably wasn't meant to be a great movie. It's probably meant to be just a good movie. But for whatever reason, it pissed me off this year, and I've hated it ever since.
You guys are taking the piss, man. I still don't understand this hatred that you guys have for Beekeeper. I understand. I remember, debates that we had last time we were speaking on this film, but still, man, sometimes you guys just got to take a film for what it is. And this movie, it wasn't one of those movies that was going to be remembered. It was just a film for its time, a fun popcorn movie. That's all it was. I ain't gonna argue with you guys. Your list is your list. Is what it is, man. For me, it's gonna be Rebel Moon, mainly part 2. I had a big problem with just like character story. I think there wasn't like the character. I didn't even know if there were any character arcs for any of the characters. It felt very stagnant. I didn't really know much about the characters. I think they only said like one line about, I think around like the 5 pit. They had like a 5 pit scene when each of them was like saying one, like they said one line about like themselves. I was like, okay, cool. But there wasn't any progression. There wasn't any moments of conflicts that they had, internal conflicts or just like conflicts around them, which kind of, which did anything to their whole character arc. There wasn't nothing. So I think that was my main issue with the film. The film had the action. The action was cool. The action felt like Star Wars-ish in a way. So I didn't have an issue with the action. It was just character story for me. It was a big problem with this movie. They were just boring, bro. I'll be honest with you, like each character was boring. I don't think one character had like a memorable performance. Rebel Moon Part 2 definitely has to be number 3 on my top 3 list.
What annoys me as well about the movie and the characters was that they kept giving General Titus these like big dramatic speeches as if it was earned throughout the movie at all, as if like they'd done enough of investment into sort of the characters to sort of have this payoff of, him giving this grand speech. And even worse so, he broke out into these speeches, I think like 2 or 3 times in the movie, I was just like rolling my eyes. And the movie was so bad, I actually forgot about the movie, and it didn't make my top 3 worst movies of the year. But had I remembered watching the movie, then it would have made the list for me as well.
Yeah, Rebel Moon is my number 2.
Okay.
Which means there was something worse last year than Rebel Moon. I'm putting one in parts 1 and 2 together. It's just one story. Like, I agree with everything you've said, and I would add to that. It's just such a waste of potential, in the sense that there's not a lot of original science fiction coming out. Certainly not big space opera. Certainly nothing that kind of leans into the Star Wars feeling. We made a video a few months ago about how nobody rips each other off anymore. Everybody's just in their own silos, making their own IPs, and how fiction as a whole is worse off for that. And it's just such a waste of an opportunity to add to the science fiction pantheon and do something that's in the Star Wars niche. That's what it could have been if they had tried. And instead, it's just Snyder acting on his worst impulses and getting kind of a blank check from Netflix. It's just all around frustrating, and it's a terrible movie overall.
That was close to going as one of my biggest disappointments of the year, I'll be honest with you. Because the way that the film was marketed to us, it felt like it was going to be the new Star Wars. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, and we kind of needed that. And I'm not really totally invested in the whole Star Wars franchise, but I do know, like, I do definitely thank it for its impact that it had in cinema. So having another film that would have been had potential to be as impactful as Star Wars would have been a big thing, especially when it comes to streaming, because I love streaming. I don't really like the rep that streaming does get, like, you know what I'm saying? So I thought that could have definitely had a positive impact on streaming.
Imagine if that movie had been at least fine, and now we have a pipeline of sequels and spin-offs and whatever else that is maybe a cash grab in some way, but it would be building on a new world with new stories to tell. And we're all worse off because that didn't happen, and they didn't even try. Is this the thing?
My number 2 is The Crow. And I think there's a common trend in a lot of these movies where they just get so much wrong in terms of sort of like the characters in the movies and the story. This one in particular had terrible dialogue as well, and like his girlfriend in this movie was like particularly like grating anytime she was on screen. Trying to like refresh myself on the movie, it was just like that bad. I just like completely like forgot some of the large parts of it, but it was just like one of those, again, experiences in cinema. It's just like, what is going on? Like, who approved of this? Like, who kind of like drafted this up essentially? And it just had a lot of issues with sort of the character story in this and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my number 2.
I'm surprised Crow was on your list. I actually forgot about the movie. It wasn't memorable, but it was. I wouldn't think it was one of the worst movies. So I'm actually surprised that you put that on your list. I didn't know you hated that much.
I mean, the reason for it is I didn't want to have a repeating trend for what my like movies would have been, because in number 1 we're gonna package up a whole bunch of movies and put it as number 1.
I'm not gonna argue. I Crow for me, like, it wasn't memorable whatsoever, so I don't even care about that film. So I was just surprised that the way, like, you know, the effect that it had on you.
For me, it didn't crack the top 3 just because it's firmly in this large middle pack of movies that are bad and were always going to be bad, and there wasn't even anything to really latch onto at all. No, there's something that could have been good. So like Borderlands is another one that's also not in my top 3, even though it was pretty terrible. There are just movies where you just say, well, this feels kind of obligatory and kind of rote and on autopilot, and there's nothing redeeming here. But it's also not a disaster. Kind of like if I have that category in my head where I file movies like The Crow, it's like that thing where I'm not even disappointed because it's to be expected.
Speaking of Borderlands and speaking of disaster, my number 2 is Borderlands. That movie was a disaster. That, I can't lie to you, I was so angry because I bought IMAX seats for that one. Oh my days. That film probably was one of the most discombobulated, disjointed stories I've ever seen this year. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, the trailers didn't look too great, but they looked too bad. But I didn't know I was gonna get that. Like I said, the story just felt discombobulated and just disjointed. It felt like they were just shooting scenes. Like it didn't feel like any like cohesiveness in the storytelling. It just felt like scene after scene after scene. It just felt like the scenes were inputted. And like, yeah, that was a disaster. I don't really have much to say about that movie. It just felt like a train wreck watching that film. I was very disappointed. I'm not familiar with the game at all, so I don't know if it was like a loyal adaptation to the actual story, to the actual game, but I'm not too sure. But just as the way that the story was told, it just felt like a train wreck. Number one.
All right, my number one is Madam Web. And the reason for that is that, like, it's kind of Madam Web and its audience. This is kind of my number one for worst thing of the year that happened to movies, because nobody expected anything great from Sony, but this is even worse than all its peers. This is not a movie. This is just scraps from the rubbish bin, pasted together and released in cinemas. People paid $100 million to see it. That means somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 million people saw this and said, yeah, I want to see this. I want to pay money for this. And no more than 2 or 3 million of those can be critics. Like, there's just too many people who went to see this and said, yeah, this is fine. I think too few people recognized just how broken this movie is and how it should never have been released. And it's not just because it's a bad movie. It's not just how it treats the character or how unnecessary it is or anything like that. It's just not a functioning movie. And for something like that to make $100 million just because of IP is an indictment of the audience. Leave your comments below. And we cannot expect these companies to do anything else as long as stuff like this happens. Right? There were a few movies like Borderlands that were just outright rejected. And I think Crow was the same, where people just didn't go. And if any movie in this year should have gotten that treatment, should have been Madam Web, I don't see how anybody can look at this and say, yeah, this is a movie.
I agree. I'm just surprised that like the footprint it left on the culture. Like everyone quotes Madam Web whenever they're talking about a terrible movie. It's funny. Do you see what the Sony CEO said? I think he said something about, he mentioned Craven. I think he mentioned Madam Web as well. He said he doesn't know why Madam Web flopped in box office. I was like, bro, the fact that you just said that shows why you shouldn't be CEO of Sony. I can see why your movies are flopping now.
I think it's important to realize that he's not talking to us. He's talking to the shareholders. He's essentially trying to do damage control. He's trying to say, no, like this, like we are the victims of the whims of, the internet or whatever. We are not actually bad at our jobs. And anybody who's ever done bad work and has had to talk to their boss about this knows how to spin that, right? Like, this is what he's doing. This is not like an honest conversation about how these are actually good movies. This is about damage control to shareholders. That's what this is.
Well, at least Sony gave us a few movie that we're not going to forget about. So it is.
I mean, is there any surprise? But I'm going to lump in all the Sony movies into one. So we're chucking Venom: The Last Dance and we're putting Craven in here as well. They're all guilty by association. Again, this is just Sony. It feels like putting out movies for these characters to keep the rights of sort of the Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, as opposed to sort of attempting to put any type of like care or any type of like love into the sort of the stories they're trying to tell. Everything just seems so hollow in what they're doing. There isn't much thought put into sort of developing compelling and interesting characters in this. I mean, Venom, for example, in his final sort of movie or in his sort of third movie had no real sort of character journey that he went on at all in the movie. Like he didn't start in one place and end in another. He was pretty much just the same character throughout the whole movie. Like there was like nothing to it at all. I mean, Daniel kind of like expanded on Madam Web. There's probably like no more to say on that apart from sort of the villain in that as well. He was
I try. Huh? I haven't given up on saying more about Madam Web, but go on.
Oh yeah, no, like Madam Web, like the villain in that was just Jesus Christ, he was so bad. And then you have Craven, and then Craven is just an example of not understanding the characters that you have. Craven was just it's a case of, we have Spider-Man, we don't really have any other heroes. How do we turn our villains into heroes or whatever? And you completely butcher the essence of what Craven was meant to be. And there was so many other ways that they could have done it in a more sort of interesting way, while still keeping Craven as a hunter in this. You have Venom in there. He could have been like hunting Venom. You even have like Rhino in the movie. He could have been like hunting Rhino. You could have again sort of made Craven a bad guy, but made Rhino an even better, worse guy, so that we support Craven and what he's doing, even though he does maybe like some unethical things in there. But they had to go to the route of sort of trying to make him a hero, trying to make him sort of this tree-hugging, animal-loving character, which he's not, and it just didn't work for me at all. And again, the biggest thing in that movie is that Craven's meant to be a hunter, and we don't really see him doing any hunting at all. in that movie, which is a big slap in the face to anyone that has any care or love for Craven. So yeah, my number one is Sony as a whole. They're just shit, pretty much.
Yeah. So at one point, I found out that Sony referred to the Sonyverse as the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters, or SPUMC for short. And I've been using that acronym at every opportunity. And I think it's just remarkable how unforced an error that is. Because then Penguin comes along and just does a show about a villain, and not even one of the popular ones, right? Like Penguin is nowhere near the top of popular Batman villains. And they just have an idea and they tell a story where he's actually a villain. And because it focuses on character, people love it. And imagine if they'd given the Penguin treatment to like a minor Spider-Man villains for the last, 4 years, 5 years? Imagine what could have been.
Yeah. Because like a lot of these characters have like interesting things about them. Like a lot like Craven being a hunter. Like there's like so many cool ways that you can kind of like show him, almost like in like detective mode or something like that. You could have even made it like a series or whatever, or you could have done it in a movie. But like you got Venom, and you've got like all these different symbiotes and stuff like that you can really like delve into. And I just don't think that they ever utilized any of it. And even when in Venom 3, when they had that scene with all the symbiotes at the end, you're making them fight unkillable monsters who are just like running through all these symbiotes. Which is a bit like, what's the point? Like you have all these like cool variations of Venom that are being portrayed in the most basic and unsatisfying way possible in that movie. So yeah, very frustrating.
And these companies don't understand that the whole appeal of the superhero movie is the characters. Like people really care about the characters that have kind of floated to the top. There's hundreds and hundreds of superhero characters and villains and whatever that never worked out and that have been forgotten and appeared in one issue in the 70s or whatever. But the ones are the ones that have a personality and that have a story and that have something that appeals to people. And then these companies pay for the rights to these characters and then strip away everything that's unique and appealing about these characters and then do something else. And I'll never understand that. And like the Sony was like the ultimate expression of that.
And that's what the superhero genre was doing really well at the start. And I think that's where like the frustrations come from in the last couple of superhero movies that we've been getting, is that they found an archetype that worked for these characters where they're kind of like quippy and told too many jokes and this and the other. And then every character we've been getting has been doing the same things, when again, the reason we care about like Iron Man and Spider-Man and Captain America is because of their unique characters and their unique flaws and like the unique stories that they were going through, essentially. Yeah. So yeah.
$100 million. I say it once more.
For me, Joker 2. Joker, the first one, is in my top 10 greatest movies of all times. Joker 2 is in my top 10 worst movies of all times. That movie was... I'm not even going to get too much into it. If you guys want to know my full opinion on that, go and watch our review for that. But yeah, Joker 2, that was a disaster. That's the first time I was heartbroken while watching a movie. That's the first time I was close to walking out of the film. I just couldn't walk out of the film because we had to do a review to it. But yeah, that movie was abysmal. And Todd Phillips still hasn't given us... I don't know if he's given us a reason why he did that movie as a musical, but it is what it is. I don't really have much to it. That movie was just, as Daniel loves to say, hot garbage. That movie was trash. I flipping hate that film. Yeah, with a passion. So I'm Christian, so I should use the word hate. But yeah, that movie was flipping terrible, man. So, the biggest surprise of 2024.
So my biggest surprise was Juror number 2. So I have like a list of things I look for in a movie, like themes and character arcs and structure. Like I care a lot about these things, and I think they kind of are proven recipes for making good stories. And Juror number 2 just does all of that correctly. Just the way it's built from the ground up. It's got a couple of central ideas, and different characters are different reflections or responses to that central idea. And the structure of it is really solid and well done. And like the performances are good. Like on every front, it's at least solid. And it's not the best movie of the year, but it came out of nowhere, and it does everything right. And judging from our view counts on some of our videos on that, one of those videos on that movie is out now on our number one video now as of a few days ago. And that shows that a bunch of people have found this movie and like it and want to talk about it and at least spark some conversation. And that is more that can be said about a whole bunch of other movies. Like I said, it kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't promoted very well, but it was just completely buried. And we kind of found out about it by chance, walked into it expecting not very much. It kind of looks a bit like a made-for-TV courtroom drama, but what we actually got was a really solid character drama that's just really well done. And nobody cares, least of all the studios. It's like you have a movie that gets all the basics right and it has a positive response from the audience and everything. And the movies just say, no, let's not do that. Too risky. So for that reason, like, this is not the best movie of the year for me, but in terms of expectations and what I got out of it, like, that's the biggest gap. And I don't think I'm alone in that, judging from how much conversation it sparked.
No, that one was definitely a solid movie. Had like some like really interesting aspects of it. Raised some good conversations as well about like kind of like morality and what like isn't the right thing to do, and sort of, you know, should someone be judged based on their past and stuff like that. No, definitely some like really cool, like interesting discussions came out of that movie, for sure.
And the whole play on like the truth will set you free. It was just like, yeah, it was the way that it was just the performance in general, and just like the whole internal conflict and the dilemmas. It was just everything. That movie was a big surprise. Maybe I should have put Juror 2. But I think the film that I put, it's well deserved for me. But yeah, Juror 2 is definitely something which I was definitely surprised about. It was a very good movie.
So my biggest positive surprise, actually, firstly, was enjoying as many horror movies as I did this year. is one of my biggest positive surprise, because again, I wasn't too big on the genre, but one in particular where I was kind of going into it expecting it to be absolute middle of the road or like, you know, pretty poor throughout, but turned out to be a very, very fun, thrilling cinema experience, was Abigail. That movie, like, genuinely, I was like going into it thinking, just like rolling my eyes, like, okay, cool, another obligatory one that I've got to do for the review. But it was just like so entertaining, and it was just like hilarious in like so many parts of it. It was like the story was like kind of like basic enough and worked well enough for the sort of the story that they were trying to tell. The characters were like cool as well in it. I wouldn't say like anything too amazing from the characters, but they were like just everything was like very functional about the movie. And that's kind of why I asked for, if you're not going to do like a complete sort of complex sort of, you know, in-depth story, at least make it functional, and then make all the other entertainment aspects of it very sort of fun and sort of engaging and creative. And having a child vampire ballerina kind of going around terrorizing these adults in sort of very various sort of entertaining ways was just not what I expected, and not the fun I expected to have in the cinema. So for that reason, that was my biggest positive surprise.
Yeah, you've mentioned Abigail a few times as well. I'm surprised at your list as well. Daniel's, I was surprised, but yours, I think I'm probably going to be the most surprised about. But to be fair, Abigail was a good fun watch. For me, I'm going to say it was actually going to be Wicked, but I changed it because I'm not a big fan of musicals whatsoever. However, Wicked, I had a very good time watching Wicked, but it's not Wicked. It's going to be Furiosa. Yeah, so Furiosa for me was my biggest surprise. I'm not familiar with the Mad Max franchise, and I did watch the one with Tom Hardy a long time ago. I do know that when watching that one, it just felt very convoluted. There was a lot going on, and the way that it was, just the aesthetic of it, I wasn't really a big fan of. It felt very yellow and orange. So I was like, it just felt like a messy watch. I'm gonna watch it again because I watched it when I was young, but I'll watch it again just to see if my experience changes with that film. But yeah, the whole Mad Max franchise, I wasn't really like, I haven't been into it. That's the only one that I've seen. So then when going into Furiosa, wasn't expecting much, but then I came out with a lot. That movie was a fun film, and I was surprised that it flopped in the box office. I think it had everything. It had a great story. It was exciting. I wouldn't really comment too much on the relationship dynamic. I just think in terms of like just individual performances and the story of Furiosa herself was engaging enough for me. So that movie is definitely a biggest surprise for me, 2024. Now, biggest disappointment.
So for me, that is Hellboy Crooked Man. And the reason for that is, so this is not about the worst movie, this is about expectation versus what we actually got. And I had a lot of hopes for this going in. I'm a big fan of Hellboy. We've basically done almost the entire Hellboy movie history this year. We skipped the one from 2019, but we did the other ones. I want somebody to do just an off-the-page Hellboy that really tries to get to the essence of what this character is about and this world is about, and Crooked Man is the version that gets closest of all of them, and it very faithfully adapts a very good story. All of that is wrapped up in a whole bunch of terrible filmmaking and bad creative decisions and just all-around awfulness that just basically, I think, killed any attempt to get Hellboy translated to the screen probably for the rest of the decade. I hope I'm wrong about that, and I've not really checked like its box office or anything like that, but just its resounded negative response that it's gotten, I think, has just deflated that franchise. 2 failed attempts in a row, I think, is box office poison and is investor poison. That movie is the reason we will likely not get like proper Hellboy, but within that there's some good stuff. It might be the best version of Hellboy, just as a character we've had so far, and like the disappointment I felt walking out of that was probably the biggest I've had this year watching a movie.
It's annoying because you could see the potential in that film. It had its moments, especially like you said with Hellboy as a character, but it was just a train wreck.
Joker, probably get there. And this probably would have been in my top 3 worst movies, but I didn't want to repeat movies, so it didn't fit in that category, but fits in here. They massacred my boy, man. Again, the first Joker was just such a great movie, a great character study on the Joker or Arthur Fleck as a character and him becoming the Joker. This is the one rare case where they make the villain a lot more empathetic and you're really kind of like behind what he's doing. They even like kind of like recontextualize the Joker laugh as well, and they do it in like a very creative way in that first movie. And then everything about what made the first movie so great, they get so wrong in the second movie. They completely, strip him away from the end of the first movie, the notoriety that he reaches at the end of the first movie, and him as a character, they completely like strip it away and break him back down to the most basic version of himself. And you're throughout the whole movie waiting for him to kind of like recapture and re-become that version of himself. And there's like maybe like a brief moment in the courtroom where it's kind of like embracing the Joker personality again, but all in all, it ends with him saying that this whole Joker thing was a facade. He's not really the Joker, and he's like a bit of a loser and this and the other. And the movie ends with him just kind of getting shanked randomly by another person who could be perceived as becoming the real Joker based on some of the influence that he's had on people and whatever. And it was just crap, man. Like, forget all the musical stuff aside. Like, like a lot of that was like, quite frustrating in this, but it was just what they did to him as a character, and they completely like missold it into the marketing as well, because there's like so many shots in the trailers and stuff like that of like him and Harley Quinn just kind of like, I don't know, like being the Joker, like being his like eccentric self or whatever. And it turns out like most of that are just dream sequences. Most of that are like in his imagination, and none of that is actually in real life, which was extremely disappointing. And to go from being one of the movies I was like, I can't wait for this one to come out at the start of the year, to when it come out and the reaction to it was just pretty dire, pretty diabolical, I would say, what they did to that movie.
For me, it has to be Longlegs. Longlegs was actually one of my most anticipated movies before the trailer was released. I was really excited to go watch that movie, but then actually watching it, I think they told the story wrong, and it felt like there was it felt very slow watching the film. It felt very slow, and I think they should have told Nicolas Cage's character story more, because for me, his character, like his individual performance in that movie was it was crazy. It was great. Like, I was more invested in his character, and I wanted to should have been a story which was told to us in parallel with the main character, because I think the main character, her character, was definitely fitting for the movie. It's just like it matched well with the mood and the tone of the film, but there needed to be more excitement, and I think Nicolas Cage's character brought that excitement, but we didn't really see much screen time of his. We only saw only moments of him, and I think those moments were great. Like, I was whenever Nicolas Cage came on screen, that's when I was most engaged. So I was pretty disappointed to see how his character ended up. But yeah, all in all, I think that's a film which I was heavily disappointed in, man. Leaving that cinema, it felt like, I wouldn't say it was one of those movies where they were trying to be very artsy with it, because how there's those films where like when an artist creates a painting and they try and make it seem like it was created by the gods. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's artsy rubbish. I wouldn't say this was like an artsy rubbish type of film. I would say it wasn't as deep as they thought it was, in my opinion. I think it could have been a great movie. Unfortunately, it wasn't. So I was very disappointed.
I'm shocked. That was actually one of the horror movies I actually enjoyed quite a bit this year. And I'm a fan of, like, when movies kind of like take things slow. Obviously not there's finding the right pace of the movie, but I didn't have a problem with some of the pacing of the movie and some, how slow they were kind of like revealing certain things. Like I can't remember it all like off the top of my head because we watched it like quite a while back, but that was one that I definitely walked out thinking, okay, like I really actually enjoyed myself.
I just think they needed that excitement, and I think Nicolas Cage's character brought that excitement, but we didn't get to see his story, or we didn't get to see much of him. So it was like with just the main character, like, I don't think she could have run the movie by herself, as in, like, tell, like, I don't think her story was enough for the movie to feel complete. And that's why I think they should have laid more into Nicolas Cage's character, but unfortunately they had different plans. Just so for me, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, what I remember again was that they like swapped in the mother as like the eventual villain of this, and like she was the one that was kind of like carrying out Nicolas Cage's character's bidding for him. I actually remember like really liking that kind of like plot twist and sort of know what direction they took that in. But I do appreciate that obviously like Nicolas Cage kind of brought this kind of like chilling and like haunting vibe. Anytime he was on screen, he had like definitely had good screen presence whenever he was on, and I can see why you would want more of that. But the direction that the movie went in, I don't think I had too much of a problem with, if I remember correctly.
All right, well, the last question. What is your most anticipated movie for 2025?
So, I like the superhero movie genre, and I do hope that Superman, well as the others that are coming out next year, are kind of like a reset button or the start of a new era or something like that. But I've decided to not get too invested in it and just see what they do. And if I like what they do, then that's great. And so if you put aside the big blockbuster superhero movies of next year that are coming out and look at what else is in the lineup, it's just sequels, reboots, franchises, for the most part, stuff that looks very uninspired. And so I had to dig quite deep to find something that's an original movie and that also sounds interesting. And so my pick is Novocaine, which is a small action movie that comes out sometime next year, which is essentially about this guy who cannot feel pain, and then bank robbers kind of abduct his girlfriend, and he has to go and rescue her. And because he can't feel pain, it turns into a superhero story, where he basically goes through 2 hours of extreme punishment and gets worse and worse. But there's nothing the bank robbers can do to stop him because he can't feel any pain. And from the trailer and from the previews, it looks a bit like this could be in the realm of John Wick and Kingsman and these kinds of movies where you can just have fun with action sequences. And if they deliver on that, then that could be a lot of fun. So I have no idea if it will turn out, and maybe this prediction will age badly. But that is the one where I said, oh yeah, that could be something. I think that's the only one that I saw of the movies that have been announced where I had that reaction.
Yeah, I have seen that advertised. It does look interesting. It's got the guy from The Boys in it as well. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and like you said, it's just how they go about being creative with the action set pieces. I think is like the key thing with some of the premise that they've set up in that movie.
I think the premise is fine, but you have to really wow people with the choreography. They might or might not, and I hope they do. And so for that reason, that's the one I'm actually looking forward to seeing, as opposed to where we'll see it when it comes out. But this looks like more of the same. And yeah, so that's my pick.
So I know that you avoided the superhero genre for your picks, but I've put Superman and Fantastic Four as my kind of like joint most anticipated for next year. And the main reason for that is I believe for both Marvel and DC, this could potentially be a Iron Man moment for both of them, in the sense that for obviously like DC, this is the first movie in James Gunn's DC universe of movies that he's sort of kind of like unfolding. There's like a lot riding on it. It's a character that I haven't ever particularly loved previously. Superman, he's always been one that would be like, okay, whatever. Like he's like invulnerable. He's like pretty boring. Like there's nothing you can really do to him. But if anyone can kind of like make me care about characters and make me invest in characters, it's James Gunn. And I definitely I know a lot of people do love Superman, and I definitely want to understand the hype behind him. I've always been more the Batman guy. So I do want to see how he's portrayed and how James Gunn reimagines his character. And obviously from the trailer, we've seen that, they've shown him to be a little bit more vulnerable. You see him bleeding out in the snow and stuff like that. So, that's on that side. That's what I'm excited about, Superman. And then Fantastic Four, for Marvel, they have been in this period where, you know, they're putting out a bunch of movies that just aren't hitting or haven't sort of captured the magic of, you know, the earlier Marvel movies. I feel like they've kind of become a little bit more formulaic. And I feel like Fantastic Four is the movie where they've had the opportunity to course correct. So like everything that's, you know, kind of coming out before Fantastic Four is movies that were already in the pipeline, were already in production, or there was already a script there in place, etc. But I feel like Fantastic Four, and again, I've never really been a lover of Fantastic Four. I don't hate them. I've never been a lover of them. I know that they're like supposed to be like the first family of Marvel, and historically they were one of the biggest, you know, comic book sort of series that were being sold. Maybe, you know, doesn't have the same level of sort of relevancy in modern audiences. So I feel like for Marvel, this is the opportunity to kind of like re-establish themselves in the superhero genre as the dominant force, and it's a way to, you know, give the Fantastic Four the same treatment that they've given, you know, characters like Iron Man, Captain America, and sort of Thor, these sort of kind of like B-list comic book characters at the time, and elevating them to sort of household names where sort of they're kind of like recognized as A-listers. So very interested to see what fresh ideas that they've sort of had for this movie, and if they can kind of try to recapture what they've done before and maybe move away from some of the more formulaic stuff that they've been putting out recently.
For me, it's going to be Alien Earth series. I believe it's coming out summer 2025. Like you already know the impact that Alien Romulus had on me. So I'm seriously invested in when it comes to this franchise. I pray to God that they're going to release more projects in the whole Alien universe, because I'm like totally invested in this now. I wasn't really so before. I've seen all the Alien movies. Well, not all. I've seen Alien 1, Alien 2, and then everything in the 2000s after that. I haven't seen Alien 3 or 4. Was there a fourth one? Yes, I haven't seen those two, so I'm gonna go back to watch those two. But I've seen majority of the Alien films. So yeah, after Alien Romulus, I'm heavily invested in this one. I am kind of interested in to see how Thunderbolts is gonna turn out, and 28 Years Later, because I just finished watching 28 Days Later. I mean, I couldn't finish watching that movie before, but I just finished watching that recently this week, and it was good. Surprisingly, it was really good. So I am kind of interested to see what they're gonna do 28 Years Later. But in terms of like just what I'm most anticipating, like waiting for, I'd say is Alien Earth. All right, guys. Well, it looks like our wrap up for 2024 is finito. Thank you very much for tuning into today's episode.
Let us know your thoughts down below. What are some of your favorite movies? What were some of the movies that disappointed you, or ones that, you know, made you walk out of the cinema as well? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And of course, if you enjoyed our discussion, tell a friend. And if you hated what we discussed today, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
Thank you very much, guys, and we will catch you next week. Have a happy new year and au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.